Hi everyone, so the Animo arc on Venti is getting a rerun in 3.1. So this will be an updated guide. It will cover his kit and talents, it will cover best artifact sets, his crit build versus EM build and what substats you want on your artifacts. It will cover his best weapons, his constellations, and some team comps that work well with Venti. So without further ado, let's get into it. So with Ventus talents, his normal attack is not important. You do not need to level up his normal attacks because you won't be using them. You'll mainly be using his elemental skill and elemental burst. His burst takes first priority, his elemental skill is second priority. Level up his burst first, then his elemental skill. His burst basically creates a black hole that sucks in smaller enemies. It does not suck in the bigger enemies, but it does suck in smaller enemies, which gives him an excellent crowd control capabilities when it comes to certain types of enemies. And it also basically swirls the first element it comes into contact with, and his elemental skill basically has a press damage and a hold damage. His press cooldown is 6 seconds, hold is 15 seconds. In battle, holding the hold skill doesn't really have that much use. The press skill is usually better because of the low cooldown, but when you're going into overboard, his first passive talent makes it so that when you hold his elemental skill, it creates an up current which allows you to fly, which can be useful for terrain traversal. But otherwise in battle the hold skill is not very useful. The press skill is definitely better because of the low cooldown. And his second passive regenerates 15 energy for Venti after the effects of Wind Grand's code ends. Basically his second passive talent, what it does is it regenerates 15 energy after his burst ends, which means his burst, which is usually 60 cost, becomes 45 cost. As a result of that, you do not need too much energy recharge on Venti. I'd say you only need around 150-160% most. And he gets energy recharge as passive talent, so he gets to about 132 on his own, I believe. You only need about 20-30% extra energy recharge on it. Now, as for his artifact sets, his best in slot is definitely the 4-piece Viridescent Venerous set. It provides 15% animo damage bonus as a 2-piece set, and it provides increased sword damage by 60%, and it also decreases the opponent's elemental res to the element infused in the sword by 40% for 10 seconds. Basically, any element you swirl with Venti will cause the enemy to have their resistance to that element decreased by 40%. So the 4-piece Viridescent Venerer is the best artifact to use on Venti. However, if you do not have the Viridescent Venerer, there's alternatives, but the Viridescent Venerer is definitely the best piece, and best set, and you should definitely farm that. And it has gotten a little easier to farm considering it has also been added to the artifact strongbox. So if you are farming that domain and you get artifacts of the different set or artifacts that you do not want to keep, you can just throw them into strongbox. You can even farm different artifact domains and just throw the pieces you don't want to keep into strongbox with Viridescent Venerer. If you have Venti, or if you are getting Venti, then make sure you try and get the 4-piece Viridescent Venerer as soon as possible. Now, other alternatives that can be used are 2-piece Wanderers and 2-piece Gilded Dreams, both of which provide 80 elemental mastery for 2-piece set. So when you use 2 pieces of each, they provide basically plus 160 elemental mastery, which is also pretty good. But the 4-piece Viridescent Venerer is definitely better. Now, as for his builds, Venti can be built in 2 ways. There is the Elemental Mastery build and the Crit build. Now, the Elemental Mastery build is much easier to do and requires a lot less investment. The Crit build requires very high investment, but if you can pull it off, it provides more damage. But it requires a lot of investment and very high crit value artifacts. Now, the Elemental Mastery build basically does not require that much investment. It just needs you to stack as much elemental mastery as possible. For the elemental mastery build, for the flower and the feather, you want elemental mastery substats along with attack percent and energy recharge. For the sands, the goblet and the circlet, you want elemental mastery's main stat, and with attack percent and energy recharge its substats. Those are basically what is necessary, because with an elemental mastery build, the crit doesn't really matter. The crit damage doesn't matter that much. If you have it, it's fine, but it's not necessary. Like I said before, you need a total of about 150-160 energy recharge on Venti, so hopefully the substats will cover that. If it doesn't, then you might switch the elemental mastery sands for elemental recharge sands, or maybe get an energy recharge substat weapon, but usually you can get it off of substats, hopefully. Now, as for the crit build, you will want to go with attack with basically with the flower and feather. You want crit rate, crit damage as much as possible. With the sands, you want attack percent sands with crit rate, crit damage. You want an emo damage goblet with the crit rate, crit damage, and with you want a crit damage circle with crit rate substat, or crit rate circle with crit damage substat, depending on what you're lacking. If you are below 70% crit rate, then I'd suggest go with the crit rate circlet. But if you are 70% or more crit rate, then definitely go with the crit damage circlet. The EM build is definitely easier to go for. The crit build provides more damage, but it requires very high investment, as I said before. As for Venti's weapons, it gets very complicated if you go very deep into it. But to keep it simple, his best weapon would be the Stringless. The Stringless has elemental mastery mains as a substat, and its passive increases elemental skill and elemental burst damage by 24%, which provides a huge damage boost at R1, and at R5 it basically increases it by 48%. So if you have R5 Stringless, it will definitely be the best in slot for Venti. Now some 5-star weapons might do better, like you Elegy for the End can provide some better support capabilities in some situations, but not in every situation. The Stringless is definitely best in a lot of situations, even better than a lot of 5-star weapons in some situations. For crit Venti, I suppose the Polar Star or the Thunderpulse or the Skyward Hop might work better as well, but for the Elemental Mastery build, definitely the Stringless is the best weapon you can use. The Elegy for the End can provide some good buffing capabilities for your team and provide some good decent support skills, but overall Stringless is definitely better in my opinion. If you do not have Stringless, or if you need maybe a low energy recharge, then you can definitely use the Favonius Warbow, but Stringless is better. And if you're starting out and you do not have any of these gacha weapons, then you can just use the 3-star Raging Bow, which you will definitely have. At R5 it basically increases damage effect by Hydro Fire, which if you swallow just increases damage, and it has elemental mastery substat, so it's also a good weapon for Venti if you do not have Stringless or any of the other better weapons. Now let's talk about his constellations. Venti at C0 is very good. None of his constellations are necessary. They provide certain buffs, give him additional damage, but they aren't necessary. His C1 basically fires to additional arrows per aim shot, which is useless because you do not use aim shot with Venti. His C2 decreases his E skill decreases opponent's animal res and physical res by 12% for 10 seconds, and opponents launched by these skills suffer an additional 12% animal res. This is one of the very few animal res shared sources in the game. The C3 basically increases his burst by 3 levels. His C4 makes it so that when he picks up an elemental over particle, he receives a 25% anemo damage bonus, so it provides a nice damage bonus too. However, it's C4, so the investment is pretty high, and it's not necessary for him because he does pretty good damage as is, even at C0. His C5 just levels up his elemental skill, and his C6 basically says that targets who take damage from his Winds Grand Door, basically his elemental burst, have their enemy res decreased by 20%. And if an elemental absorption occurs, then their res towards the corresponding element is also decreased by 20%. Basically, it will decrease whenever Venti uses his elemental burst, the enemies that are hit by it will have their animal resistance decreased by 20%, as well as the element that it swirls. The resistance of the element that is swirled by the burst is also shredded by 20%. So that is also a very nice buff, but like I said, it is C6 and it is very high investment, and it is definitely not necessary because even without it, even at C0, Venti is very good. Now let's talk about the team comps. Venti is a very flexible character who can fit into a lot of teams. Now the best team for Venti is the Morgana comp, which includes Ganyu, Mona, Venti and Diona. Mona can be replaced with another good hydro applicator like Kokomi, and Diona can be replaced with another cryo character like Ayaka, because the burst is just very strong. Basically, we use the two cryo characters for the cryo resonance. Diona is usually used because she can heal and provide shields. Ganyu's burst basically applies cryo and provides damage. Mona or Kokomi will use their Hydra application to keep the enemies frozen. Venti's burst will just suck up all of Ganyu's icicles and will not only keep the enemies frozen but will also provide extra damage due to the quadratic scaling. It has. This is definitely one of the best teams for Venti to be used. It basically keeps your enemies permanently frozen. However, for enemies that do not get frozen, this team isn't as good, but it still does very high damage. Venti can also be very useful in the Taser comp with Hydra application and Electro application, where you can use 2 Electro characters and another Hydra applicator like Mona or Kokomi and use Venti's burst and swirl them and provide continuous electro charge damage to them. So overall, Venti is a very useful character to have. He has a very good crowd control capabilities. He can fit into a lot of teams. He can provide elemental rest shred with the help of the Viridescent Venomous set. If you have Constellations on him, he can provide Animal Rest Shred through C2 and also Animal Rest Shred and C2 and C4. You can provide Animal Rest Shred through C2 and C4 and provide Elemental Rest Shred through C6 as well. But mostly he can provide a lot of utility for your teams. If you do not have him, you can pick him up. He's a very good character to have and he can help you out in a lot of situations. There are definitely better characters, but he's still very good, and he's also very good at C0 and does not require too much investment if you build him on an elemental mastery build. Or for a crit build requires a lot of investment. For me, he's definitely a good character to have. And that will be all for this one. See you all in the next one.